Welcome to the last Masters of Science in Operations Management webinar for the 2016 to 2017 academic year. For your information, our webinars will start back up in the fall with the schedule of topics and dates shown here. My name is Kirk Michealson. You can see my picture here. I have a bachelor's and master's in Operations Research Analysis. I'm a retired naval officer, a retired Lockheed Martin Fellow for Operations Research Analysis, and a past president and fellow of the Military Operations Research Society of Moors. I'm currently an adjunct professor teaching Excel and decision models in the University of Arkansas's Master of Science in Operations Management program. Throughout my career as an operations manager and project manager, I have had one main problem: the inability to say no. Many people know this, especially my wife, as she brought me a magnet that I proudly display in my office. Stress is what happens when your gut says no and your mouth says, "Of course, I'd be glad to." As a result, my workload increases and increases. I needed to learn some time management principles to keep my head above water. As a result, welcome to the time management webinar. This was originally developed using about 25 references and 7 different modules for the Master of Science of Operations Management program. I condensed it all into this 1-hour webinar for your presentation today. I hope you have had the opportunity to take the time management self-assessment that was included as a link to the overview of the webinar. We will go over your results and recommendations at the end of the module. If you haven't had time to complete it, we'll give you a little bit of time. Okay, the guidelines for and ground rules for this webinar. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat window. Depending on time available, I will either answer them at the end of the presentation or I will email my response to you after the meeting. If you have any questions about time management anytime, please feel to email me at my University of Arkansas email address, kamichea@uark.edu. Let's start with some background. The chart on the left is an example of an individual's weekday hours. Just with the areas listed for sleep, work, family, commute, eating, and workout, all 24 hours are taken. But you say, maybe, wait, Kirk, hey, I don't only work 8 hours. I work more than that. I don't always get 8 hours of sleep. My commute time round trip is more than an hour. This is an example, but in your cases, yours are probably all 24 hours are taken too. Once we get to the weekend, which is the pie chart on the right-hand side, I've taken out the work, but now there's more time to catch up with your family. Take the kids to their baseball or volleyball tournaments and events. Go on a picnic, go to an amusement park, a water park, or you've got your projects takes up part of your time. For me, it's my honeydew projects, mowing the lawn, cleaning the garage, doing some landscaping, whatever the case to be. We're still busy on weekends. So how can you balance your time, and how can you add more work, or if you're in the Master of Science of Operations Management program, to your current schedules? These are questions I hope to answer in this webinar to help you out managing your time management skills. This webinar is to provide a high-level overview of time management skills to help you balance your current schedule, or perhaps to add more work or time to study for your courses to your already busy schedule. There are 5 sections in the webinar. I'm going to go over an overview of time management and talk about some time management principles and the benefits earned. Talk about some time management challenges and the common mistakes. And then what are some techniques and skills available to help us overcome the challenges and time mistakes. And finally, we'll get into that self-assessment so you can kind of take a look overall where you stand and maybe some areas what you can do to help you out. We'll go over that end and then we'll summarize. So the first section we're going to do is go over an overview of time management and talk about the benefits gained from following the time management principles. As everyone knows, there are only 24 hours in a day, and we cannot add any more hours. Several of my friends and coworkers continually to ask me, "Kirk, do you ever sleep?" They can't believe how much I can get accomplished in a short amount of time. I can accomplish more by understanding time management to better juggle my tasks and to get more done in a day. Let's start discussing some more on time management. First, we've all heard that time is valuable and it waits for no one. We can't afford to waste time. As it states in the last bullet, no matter what, we are always either in thoughts, conversations, and actions. Therefore, we must learn to manage our time to accomplish more. First, what is time? For the dictionary I found online, it says it's a time is when stuff happens. Okay? And there's two types of time. There's clock time and real time. I want to go over these two sub-bullets and read them to make sure we understand the difference. In clock time, there are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and 365 days in a year. All time passes equally. When someone turns 50, they are exactly 50 years old, no more or no less. In real time, all time is relative. Time flies or drags depending on what you're doing. 2 hours at a Department of Motor Vehicle waiting to get a driver's license can feel like 12 years. I know, I've been there. And yet, our 12-year-old children seem to have grown up in only 2 hours. We know we can't change clock time, but we can work with real time. But how do we work with real time? I want to emphasize and highlight some of the points on this slide. Clock time is irrelevant. You don't live in or even have access to clock time. You live in real world, in real time. A world in which all time flies when you're having fun and drags when you're not. The good news is that real time is mental. It exists between our ears. We can create it, and anything we create, we can manage. It's time to remove any self-sabotage or self-limitation we have around not having enough time or today not being the right time to do something. Here are some descriptions of time management that you can read. I want to go over some others. Time management is a set of principles, practices, skills, tools, and systems working together to help you get more value out of your time with the aim of improving your quality of your life. The important point is that time management is not necessarily about getting lots of stuff done, but much more important is making sure that we're working on the right things, the things that truly need to be done. Smart time managers know there is much more to do than anyone could possibly accomplish. So instead of trying to do it all, smart time managers are very, very picky about how they spend their time. If you become a good time manager, you'll not only get a lot more done in less time, but you feel more relaxed, focused, and in control of your life. What happens if you practice good time management? Here are some principles of practicing good time management I want to emphasize. Being busy isn't the same as being effective. You got to learn to work smarter. We can improve our ability to function more effectively, even when time is tight and pressures are high. Good time management, like I just said, lets you work smarter and not harder to get more done in less time. Time management not only helps individuals to make the best use of time, but also ensures successful accomplishment of tasks within the stipulated time. It is essential to do the right thing at the right time. Okay, so why do you want to practice these time management principles? Well, here are your benefits of practicing time management. Being punctual and disciplined, becoming more organized, realizing goals and objectives and reaching success, planning better by being able to prioritize tasks, and becoming less prone to stress and activity. We'll talk about some of the techniques and skills to do this in our techniques and skills section coming up. Now that we have set the stage with what time management is and the benefits of practicing time management principles, I want to present a brief, high-level overview on some time management challenges and common mistakes. I'm not going to go into them deeply in this webinar. In fact, I just have 2 slides to list, but I wanted to let you know they exist. Here's some time management challenges. Managing interruptions, dealing with lateness, organizing disorganized people, minimizing distraction, practicing the art of concise conversations, creating time in your day, We're going to discuss how to overcome these when we get to the techniques and skills section, but I want to highlight one from a personal example. Practicing the art of concise conversation. When this was first thought of for time management, it was more thought of in the verbal world. But now, as much as we're doing emails and other things in a written form, we need to practice the art of concise conversations in there. My examples with emails. I'm an analyst. I'm very detailed. I used to send emails to my team with my question, the background information I understood, asking sub-questions to each one, and the emails were 2, 3, 4 pages long. I found out later, which I understood now, is that many of the folks didn't read my emails. So after some thinking about it, I said, concise conversations. Maybe if I start with an executive summary. So I'd say, hey, I'd like to get together with you and talk about the below information in the next week. I'll follow up to connect the meeting. The subjects I want to talk about are subject A, subject B, subject C, etc. And the background information of these are below in the email. Well, by doing it that way, the person on my team can read those first couple sentences, the executive summary, that won't take a lot of time out from their day. Then they can plan when they are going to put it in their schedule to get it done before a meeting and do the research to manage their time management skills. Then we get to the meeting and we can discuss it and it'll be focused. We don't have to go over a lot of background and not waste a lot of time to get on to what each of us have scheduled for our meetings. So just a thought for you in the future. Time management common mistakes. Failing to keep a to-do list, not setting personal goals, not prioritizing. They're all kind of related and we'll talk about those. Failing to manage distractions. We'll talk about that one also. Procrastination, my old friend, no longer a friend, my old friend, we'll talk about that. Taking on too much. You already heard that I have a hard time saying no. Well, what can I do if I can't say no to keep within my time management and get things done on time? We'll talk about that. Thriving on busy. Busy doesn't really help. You need to work smarter and work on the things that need to be done. So being busy is not working smarter. Multitasking. You could be working on 2, 3, 4 things at the same time. But are you really giving it the quality focus it needs? If you work on a couple things at the same time and you submit it, your manager may notice that you don't have the quality that you once had. So the recommendation is to schedule them independently when you're scheduling your task, so you give each the focus it needs. Not taking breaks. We're human, we need breaks. We'll talk about that in the techniques and skills. And ineffectively scheduling tasks. Kind of goes with the first 3 points I talk about with goals and prioritizing. Mistakes are the stepping stones to learning. We'll talk about mistakes more in a few slides. Now that I've presented some time management challenges and common mistakes, this next section will provide an overview of some of the time management techniques and skills that are available and many of which I personally use. In your mind, like mine, there may be a blur between the definitions of techniques and skills. For this webinar, it depends on which reference I source the material from and what they call them, a technique or a skill. It really doesn't matter. What I recommend you remember are the points of the sub-bullets into each, to how to help you overcome that area and practice it to be better time managers. Okay, this is the first of 4 slides. We're going to talk about setting your priorities, finishing assignments, and understanding the difference between urgent and important work. Setting your priorities and finishing assignments are related. Setting priorities, you want to prepare a to-do list. A high priority task are at the top, followed by other tasks that can be done later. Finishing assignments, marking out those tasks you completed. I know some folks use organizers, some use to-do lists. Every week on Friday, I print out a weekly calendar, and based on what I've come up with my manager on due dates and set their expectations and knowing how much it takes me to do a task, I go ahead and assign in that weekly calendar agenda 6 blocks, Monday through Friday in 5 blocks, and Saturday and Sunday 1 block together. I go ahead and assign the task I'm going to do each day. And if I complete it, I go ahead and cross it out. If I don't complete it, I ask the next day because I built some flexibility in my calendar. By crossing out the items, it gives me a sense of accomplishment to give me more push, more motivation to continue on with my project. The last thing on the side is understanding the difference between urgent and important work. Every manager I've had, sometimes I've had more than one assigning me work. Everything is important. I have never heard a manager say, hey, I got this project for you. Can you get done in 6 months or a year? They'll wait till it's due in a month or so, then they'll ask you to do it. But when I get projects assigned, I always talk with the person that gave me the task so I can learn about it more. I can learn if it's an urgent or important task, high, medium, or low priority. Is the due date hard, fast, or is there some flexibility? So I can balance it in my overall list. I take a look at my capabilities, I add it in together, and I present back my plan to my managers so I can set their expectations. Because I have this plan worked out, I'm only putting the things on the calendar for that individual week. In the Saturday and Sunday block, I write down those things that are due in the next 2 to 4 weeks and the due date they are due. That way, if I get done early, I can start working on some of those projects for the week, that in the future for that current week I'm in. If I get these pop-up projects, then I can kind of think about, okay, I've got this, how much ahead am I this week, what's coming up next week, how can I fit it in my schedule with not, or I won't have to adjust too much my future steps. For staying focused, time for other activities, and setting realistic and achievable targets. The first two are related in my mind, staying focused and time for other activities. It's about breaks. We know we're human. We have to have breaks. But when we're working on one of those high priority, urgent tasks, we need to stay focused to get it done. If it's, because we have to do it this day, it was a pop-up maybe, or whatever the case may be, we want to get it done and submit it to our manager. So I try to minimize my breaks. Well, not minimize the breaks, but not waste time. I still need to go get a cup of coffee, get a drink of water or something, have lunch, use the bathroom facilities. I need to work all that in, but I want to stay focused while I'm working on these high priority, urgent tasks. For other days, when you're working on medium priority or maybe a high priority important, you've got a little bit more time, and I've built a little bit in flexibility that it allows me time for those breaks. Plus, maybe I go to a little water cooler discussions and ask my coworkers, hey, did you see the TV show last night? What happened? Do you believe it? I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but it allows me to do that. And depending on your own company, your own organization's policies, what they allow you to do to work, maybe I build some time in for surfing the web, doing Facebook, things of that nature. But I've built in flexible time to give myself breaks so I don't get mentally exhausted by looking at that computer the whole day. As I've got the information from my managers and worked with them to understand their priorities, how hard and fast the due dates are, their expectations, I want to be able to compare that with my ability to complete a task and then set realistic and achievable targets. Don't lie to ourselves. We know how long it takes to complete a task. So I add time for flexibility. Why? Because we get those pop-up tasks. It says, in the Pentagon, when I worked there for 5 years, Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m., hey, we got this task, and we need to get it done by the end of the day. So luckily, I usually have plenty of flexibility. I could move my rest of my Wednesday work on to Thursday. But it was even more frustrating at times was at 3 p.m. on Friday, saying we need to get this done. The Admiral or the General wanted it, and we had to get it done before the end of the day on Friday. So you got to be aware of those pop-up tasks. You got to be aware how long it takes you to do a task and put in some flexibility in the schedule. What do I mean about flexibility? Let's say I normally take about 2 hours to complete a task, but I give myself 3 or so hours in my daily schedule to complete it. That provides some flexibility. Why? There'll be interruptions. There'll be distractions, such as coworkers stopping by, phone calls, etc. So I want to build time in to be able to account for that even before they actually happen. If they don't happen, I've got more time to kind of get ahead. And that always works well. Overburden yourself, being disciplined and punctual, and keeping things in the proper place. Overburden yourself. Be able to say no, and you know my ability of that. But the second part of this is offering an alternate proposal. When I talk with my managers, I make sure I compare everything, and especially if I have a schedule and the same manager gives me something else that's due in the same day, I see what I need to work, and I offer that alternate schedule to get done and get their approval right away. I take a little time to do some work up front. Being disciplined and punctual. Get to work and meetings on time. Don't be late. If you are late in the lead, you impact others' time management capabilities. This kind of relates to another part of time management, and that's meeting management. I can remember my days in the Pentagon and at Lockheed Martin where the leader didn't show up for half an hour late, or some important person who was briefing didn't show up for half an hour late. Then the 1 hour meeting actually went an hour and a half, so now I've lost an hour in my day I've got to try to make up. So based on these lessons learned, I have tried to develop meeting telegram. I try to schedule my meetings at noon, kind of like what this time management webinar is. I wait a few minutes before I actually start, like I did today. That allows those that are in a meeting to hang up on that phone call and call in, connect to the next one. Or if they're in a conference room, they can get back to their office and call in. And for those that called in on time, I'm not wasting their time about repeating things. If there's something not related to the meeting and the individual's on the line on time, I said, hey, Frank, have you seen that the new regulation that came out? We need to take a look at that when we're working with this project. May not have been scheduled in the meeting, but it gets a good chance to tell them that. Or Sue, have you had time to research this thing? If Sue says yes, I could say, hey, come by my office and let's take a look at it. So I take advantage of that time. Then I plan for about a 45-minute meeting, just like today's webinar, to allow to get the things done. I send out a read ahead, and I take, and your read ahead for this one was the self-assessment, but I take a look at the read ahead and give them a chance to take a look at it, provide comments to me, and then at their convenience, they take a look at it in their time management when they're managing their time, so we can focus on the discussions during the meeting. We have a lot of questions, we go a little bit late, we can still get done in that 1 hour, or if we don't have the questions at the time, we can get done early, and I'm giving them back time to add to their flexibility for the day. Finally, for that slide, keeping things at their proper places. Put things away. Don't have a cluttered desk to waste time finding things. I was unusual in the Navy, Lockheed Martin, for having one of the cleanest desks. I put things away in folders, in the right place on my desk, and I could easily get to it within seconds or maybe a minute or two. When I go to my team and I'm needing some information, I'd come into some of my coworkers' office, and there'd be someone like the old Dilbert cartoons where you just got piles and piles of paper on the desk. So I'd ask for something, and I'd wait about a minute or two. They couldn't find it. I said, well, bring it by my office so I can get to it. Well, 30, 45, 60 minutes later, they show up. So that wasted 30, 45, 60 minutes of that individual's time while they had to search through their material to find what they needed to give me so I could work on my next task. Changing our attitude and using an organizer. We need to take ownership of our work, and we're professionals, so we shouldn't goof around. I mean, that's why we're taking a look at working with our manager to understand the priorities, the due dates, and setting expectations with them, and then using an organizer. You can use an organizer. You can do a to-do list. Like I told you before, I use my weekly calendar to compare it to my overall project plan, but it's something, whatever's convenient to you, to keep track. Write down what you're doing, cross out what you've done, showing yourself accomplishments. Okay, let's move into skills. And like I mentioned earlier, that could be similar to what you think of techniques. And you may see some items that are familiar to what we just went through in the technique section, but they come from a couple different references, so therefore we know that they're important to consider as we're building our own time management skills. I've highlighted some points that are important for me. I follow these regularly, and I'm going to read them and then kind of tell you reinforce some points from earlier. Staying organized. The workstation must be kept clean. Keeping important files organized help you retrieve them immediately, and thus saves time, which goes on unnecessary searching. Just like I said, some folks of mine took 30, 45 minutes, an hour. Develop the habit of using an organizer or a weekly calendar like me, a to-do list, whatever works for you. There may be something else that works for you, but plan your day in advance. Work with your manager to get the overall plan, their due dates, their expectations, and you can build your plan. Prioritization. Set your priorities. Do not work just for the sake of working. Don't do busy work. Do the smart work. Prepare a task plan or to-do list. I told you that I do mine on a weekly calendar, and I have the next few weeks in the Saturday, Sunday section. High priority tasks must be attended to immediately. And we must understand the difference between high and low priority tasks, as well as between important and urgent work. And that's where I go with my communication with the manager, understanding what their expectations, me building the schedule, putting flexibility in, and then I'm getting things done on time and because I'm working smarter, I'm getting a lot more done in a smaller amount of time. Being punctual and disciplined and take ownership of the work. Being punctual helps you complete tasks way ahead of a deadline. I built something. I started working in the Navy about 7 o'clock in the morning. We had our officers call with our executive officer, our second in command, and then the workday would go on after that. I was at Lockheed Martin. We didn't have an official start time, but around 8 a.m. was the expectation. And I knew once my day started, there's going to be meetings, there's going to be interruptions, there's going to be distractions. So I built what I called quiet time. I came into work, yes, I'm an early bird. I came into work an hour, 2 hours early. That was that quiet, uninterrupted time to work on priority tasks. It was beautiful for me because it was before work hours. So there wasn't the expectation, because other people weren't in, that they would come knock on my door. Or because it's before work hours, unless they're in a different time zone, like if I'm working with somebody in the UK, they may not call before that time in the morning. Things of that nature gave me good quality time. Now, my daughter, who's a financial analyst, has adopted something similar. She's not an early riser like me, but she gets to work on time, but she stays later after her coworkers are done. She's got that quality time to do her audits, to do the financial analysis she needs to do for company. So, depending on your early riser or a later evening person, one of those options could help to minimize your disruptions and being disciplined and getting work done. We want to strive hard to complete our tasks on time. We do not keep assignments pending, and we don't want to wait for the last minute. Hopefully by prioritizing and setting the expectation with our manager, we won't be waiting to the last minute. Another way to possibly completing tasks on time, I've done this in the past, some of my coworkers have done it in the past, for managing interruptions. That's setting office hours. I get to a day that's coming up. I have 4 meetings, and the total time of the meetings are scheduled to be 4 hours. And the way the meetings are spaced, I have 3 breaks, a 1-hour break, a 2-hour break, and a 1-hour break. So I go out and I tell my coworkers, I tell my team that my office hours, because I got this really big task I'm working on, is at 2 separate hours. I try to leave that 2 hours so it's uninterruptible and can get a priority task completed. But we always know that there's something, and my team always knew if it's an emergency, they can still contact me, or you may get a phone call, because I can't send an email to everybody in the world. Of course, some people believe I would do that with my emails. But you're still going to have some interruptions, but you can minimize it. And at times, when I have long days like that, I tend to bring in a sandwich and work at my desk. I know I'm not advertising that. It's just one thing that I did. Taking ownership of your work. Be responsible for your work and learn to accept your mistakes. As I kind of mentioned earlier when we were going over the common mistakes, another phrase for mistake is lesson learned. You do a mistake, we're human. We are going to make mistakes. But learn from it so you don't repeat that mistake in the future. If you repeat that mistake, it becomes a lesson relearned. And the more lessons relearned you have on a particular mistake, your manager is going to start figuring it out. So you want to take advantage, and whatever you need to do to prevent that mistake from happening in the future, put it in your plan when you're developing your plan and providing flexibility in there. If you accepted something, then it becomes your responsibility to complete it within the allotted time. That's why I work with my managers. I ask the priorities, the type of work, what the due dates, if it's hard and fast or not, and then I go back and work my schedule, and I come up with a plan that I can work to and set my manager's expectations. With here, I've accepted it. It becomes my responsibility to complete on time. Okay, the last skill slide. Be a little diplomatic. Do not accept everything which comes your way. A polite no in the beginning will save your reputation later. I've had to learn other ways to accomplish that because, like I said, I don't like to say no. So I kind of work with my schedule, and perhaps I'll propose an alternate proposal on the schedule and due dates with my manager. And for your team, you can delegate responsibilities per their specialization and background. This way they may take more interest and complete their work on time. This is a way, if you remember from the challenges, organizing disorganized people, you're starting them out, you're giving them stuff they're interested in, and we all know with real time, and it's relative, if we're interested, time's going to fly, or if we're not interested, it's going to drag. So if you get them interested, they start getting their parts of the project on. Then as they get confidence in themselves, you can give them other things that should be in their area or you want to assign them. And because they've got that confidence of already working on projects for your team, you can get confidence of getting the stuff that they may not like to do. More focus and being reasonable kind of go together. We don't want to waste our time by loitering and gossiping around. Yes, we need to have time for breaks, perhaps depending on what we're working on for the day, again, talking with our coworkers, but we want minimizing our time on what happened in scandal last night or anything like that. So we need to really take a look at what time we're wasting, because that wasting time is not time management. But as it says under be reasonable, no, we're individual can work for the whole day. We need to have some time. We need to get away from looking at that computer 8-10 hours a day, or being on the floor, watching your team work as an operation manager on a manufacturing line, whatever the case needs to be. We need to take a break to keep ourselves mentally refreshed instead of mentally exhausted. Okay, a lot of information so far in a short amount of time. I set the stage on time management and its benefits, then I presented the challenges and common mistakes, and just completed and build on that foundation with some time management techniques and skills. You have all that information, but you perhaps did the time management self-assessment earlier. If not, we'll give you time to do it now. It's time to see where you are, and perhaps for at least 6 time management skills, what you can do to improve yourself. Do you find yourself running out of time? If so, when you know how to manage your time, like me, I gain control of what I achieve. I'm able to get a lot done in a little bit of time, which makes it look like that I don't sleep. We gave you the self-test to assess where you are. If you haven't taken it yet, not a problem. If you took it, if you put the X in the cell, it automatically computes your overall score. If not, I'm going to read through the 15 questions, and you can then give yourself points. Just put the question number on a sheet of paper, and then put your score for not at all is 1 point, rarely is 2 points, sometimes is 3 points, often is 4 points, and very often is 5 points. And then at the end, for those doing it manually, at time right now, I'll give you a couple minutes to add up what your overall score and talk overall where you're at. Then as I go into the discussion on some recommendations for improvement, just remember your question number. And you can go back and download this sheet later, then you can see the question again to kind of help you improve as we go forward. Okay, so go across, I want to give you an overview again of the point scale. Not at all, your first left column after the statement is 1 point, rarely is 2 points, sometimes is 3 points, often is 4 points, and very often is 5 points. So let me read the questions one at a time, and I'll give you a chance to answer the question. Question 1, the tasks I work on are the ones with the highest priority. Didn't need a lot of time, just put in what you think you have, and this is current. It's not where you want to be, it's where you are currently. Question 2, I find myself completing tasks at least last minute or asking for extensions. Question 3, I set aside time for planning and scheduling. Question 4, I know how much time I spend on each various task I do. Question 5, I find myself dealing with interruptions. Question 6, I use goal setting to decide what tasks and activities I should work on. Question 7, I leave contingency time in my schedule to deal with the unexpected. Question 8, I know whether the tasks I am working on are high, medium, or low value. The last page with questions 9 through 15. Question 9, when I am given a new assignment, I analyze it for importance and prioritize it accordingly. Question 10, I am stressed about deadlines and commitments. Question 11, distractions keep me from working on critical tasks. Question 12, I have to take work home in order to get it done. Question 13, I prioritize my to-do list or action program. Question 14, I confirm my priorities with my boss. Question 15, before I take on a task, I check that the results will be worth the time I put in. So go ahead and sum up your points there. Again, not at all 1 point, rarely 2 points, sometimes 3 points, often 4 points, and very often. So we're going to go over your overall results for your individual self-assessment of where you are currently. If you were 0 to 15, the good news, you've got a great opportunity to improve your effectiveness at work. Take advantage, review this module, this webinar. I know you're going to get a copy of it at the end, and see to kind of help and work one task at one skill at a time to improve yourself. If you received a 31 to 45, you're good at some things, but there's always room for improvement elsewhere. Focus on some of the 6 skills that we're going to talk about in the next few slides, and you'll most likely find that work becomes much less stressful. Finally, if you're between 46 and 75, you're managing your time effectively, but still look at these following slides to see if there's anything you can tweak to make this even better. You know, the way the questions were worded, sometimes 5 was a good answer, but other times 1 was a good answer. So take a look at that. There's a balance. Okay, now you know your score. Let's review some recommendations for improving your time management skills. But I'll list which questions the skill applies to. These recommendations are important, so I'm going to emphasize much of the information on the slide and then provide some examples of recommendations from what I've learned over the years. Goal setting. This relates to questions 6 and 10. To start managing time effectively, you need to set goals. When you know where you're going, you can figure out what exactly needs to be done in what order. Without proper goal setting, you'll fritter your time away on a confusion of conflicting priorities. So I mentioned talking to all the different managers and get their priorities. People tend to neglect goal setting because it requires time and effort. What they fail to consider is that a little time and effort in the beginning saves a lot of time overall, as well as a lot of effort and frustration in the future. So again, this refers directly to the communicating with your managers, determine their important and urgent work, as well as their high, medium, and low priority work to build your schedule, which are your goals. Related to this is prioritization. You can see a bunch of questions were related to prioritization. 1, 4, 8, 13, 14, 15. Prioritizing what needs to be done is especially important. Without it, you may work very hard and be busy, but you won't be achieving the result you desire because what you're working on is not of strategic importance. Those urgent, high priority things that need to get done at the right time. Most people, and I've seen this quite frequently over my career, have a to-do list. The problem is they're just a collection of things that need to get done. There was no rhyme or reason to the list. Maybe they put them down and they just work from top to bottom, and there was no forethought on which ones are really the important ones and which ones could wait a while. To work efficiently, you need to work on the most important high-value tasks. This way you won't get caught scrambling to get something critical done as the deadline approaches. Like goal setting, working with your manager to determine their expectation helps prioritization and work on the right things at the right time, not just working on things to be busy. Okay, next, managing interruptions, and this relates to questions 5, 9, 11, and 12. Having a plan and knowing how to prioritize is one thing. That's what we talked about in the last 2 slides. The next issue is knowing what to do to minimize the interruption you face during your day. It is widely recognized that managers get very little uninterrupted time to work on their priority tasks. Phone calls, information requests from your managers or your coworkers or your team, questions from employees, a whole host of that could crop up unexpectedly. Some need to be dealt with immediately, but others can be managed through time management. However, some jobs need you to be available for people when they need help. Like I was talking about when I had office hours and did the 2 one-hour sections for office hours, that 2 hours for my time, they knew when they could come to me if it was an emergency or anything of that nature. The bottom line is, Interruption is a natural and necessary part of life. Here, do what you sensibly can to minimize it. And that's why this managing or minimizing interruptions. But make sure you don't scare people away from interrupting you when they should, like when they have an emergency and need to talk to you. Make sure they understand that, like I did with my teams. So we learn here. There's some possible ways I've mentioned on what I've done to help manage my interruptions. My quiet time, the morning before work, evening after work, as I call it. I came up with that term. It wasn't any reference, but it's an opportunity where I had uninterrupted time that I could really minimize interruptions and distractions. Posting my office hours, like I mentioned before, could be a time to get some work done and manage interruptions. And then you all know how much time it takes you to do and complete a task. Build in some flexibility in your schedule. We all know interruptions will happen. My favorite, procrastination. It's question 2. I'll get to it later. It has led to a downfall of many good employees, even me. After too many laters, the work piles up so high that doing anything seems insurmountable. Procrastination is as tempting as it is deadly. The best way to beat it is to recognize that you have a problem. Then you need to figure out why. Perhaps you're afraid of failing. Some people are even actually afraid of success. Once you know why you procrastinate, then you can plan and get out of the habit. Reward yourself for getting jobs done. That's why I cross out my task on my weekly calendar. It gives me a sense of accomplishment to keep going forward. And remind yourself regularly of the horrible consequences of not doing those boring tasks. So here's me. I used to procrastinate tasks, especially ones I didn't look forward to doing. It was in an area I wasn't familiar to, whatever the case. I waited until the last minute and early in my career sometimes missed deadlines. I recognized my problem and I worked to change my mindset. That was the biggest thing that changed my mindset. Also, by working with my managers, finding out their priorities and when the due dates and kind of establishing a plan and establish expectations from our manager, I could build in, as I'm building my weekly schedule, those tasks I didn't like in between 2 tasks that I enjoy. That way I'm working on a project, I'm pumped, and I get this one, I know I got to do it. It's not as frustrating for me anymore. I can go ahead and get the task done, and then I know because the next project is another one I'm going to enjoy. So it keeps me working, keeps me on time, on schedule or ahead of schedule. Speaking of schedules, scheduling. Questions 3 and 7. Much of time management comes down to effective scheduling your time. When you know what your goals are and priorities are, you then need to know how to go about creating a schedule that keeps you on track. This means understanding all the factors that affect your time. You have to schedule priority tasks, you have to leave room for interruptions, and then contingency time for those pop-ups that can also otherwise cause problems like those 3 p.m. taskers I would get while I was in the Pentagon. By creating a robust schedule that reflects your priority as well as supports your personal goals, you have a winning combination, one that will allow you to control your time and keep your life in balance. Scheduling for me, and a good schedule to achieve my goals and be successful, is working with my managers, communicating with them, learning their expectations so I can help set up my plan. Then part 2 of setting up that plan is understanding how long it takes for me to do a task. Part 3 is building flexibility in my schedule and then using my weekly calendar to schedule and monitor my completion. Okay, let's summarize what we've talked about. I want to go over some of the points from each of the sections. First bullet, time management refers to managing time. The right time is allocated to the right activity. That's prioritizing, working on your list, understanding your manager's expectations with their urgent and important tasks and their high, medium, and low priorities. Effective time management allows individuals to assign specific time slots to activities as per their importance. I do this on my weekly calendar. You can do it in an organizer, you can do it in a to-do list. Time management refers to making the best use of time for proper scheduling, as we just talked about. Which activity is more important, how much time should be allocated to it, knowing which work should be done earlier and which can be done later. That's all based on your meetings with your managers. And time management plays a very important role not only in our organizations, but in our personal times. Some key points I want to emphasize. Time management is an essential skill that keeps your work under control. And help time, at least it has for me, is to keep my stress as a minimum. We'd love to have a couple hours in every day to get that extra task from our manager, to build in time to study our courses, prepare for them, do our homework for the operations management curriculum. But we know that's impossible adding clock time. So we need to work smarter on the things that have the highest priority and creating a schedule that reflects our work and personal priorities. With this in place, we can work in a focused and effective way and really start achieving these goals, dreams, and ambitions. Finally, for time management, developing time management skills doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey. I think I forgot to tell you on the overall slide on the time management self-assessment what my score was. I only got a 63 out of 75. I'm still working on it, but I'm aware of what I need to work on to get better and tweak those areas, as I mentioned when I was on that slide. So as we complete this time management webinar, there's two questions I want you to leave you with to think about. How do you spend your time each day? And can you do better? So before I end and go to questions, I want to go to the slide we had up in the beginning of the brief, the Master Science of Operations Management Program at a Glance. You can read what's under here for admission criteria and degree information. I want to highlight a few points. This program is a master's degree program with a flexible schedule. You can finish the degree in 1 year. You see there's 10 graduate courses and there's 5 8-week sessions under the degree information. If you budget your time and work time management, you can actually build time in your schedule to do 2 courses at a time. Maybe it's only 1 course at a time, but you can see under admission criteria, you can have up to 6 years to complete. You can do this completely online. Both my courses are online asynchronous, or depending on where you're located, you might be able to go to some live courses in the evening to fit your schedule. It's one of the most important, most affordable programs in the country. You can see the tuition fee and fees that are listed here under degree information. It's fully accredited and offered by the flagship university of the state, the University of Arkansas. The application is free, and all you need to send are your transcripts to be admitted. For details, go to the website provided. You can see at the bottom there, operations-management.uark.edu. So, let's go and see if I can, and Mary will help me out if I don't, if I see the questions. In the chat box, got Mindy's hello. I got some emojis or whatever they're called. Maybe I'm too old to use them. Welcome. I don't see any questions on here that are in the chat box. Am I looking in the right place, Mary?
Yeah, you're looking in the right place. There are no questions currently posted. If anyone in the audience has a question, right now would be a great time to add it to the chat box. Just click the little bubble icon in the lower corner. Ah, very good. There's a question now.
I will defer to Mindy and to Mary. I know you're going to get access. I don't know if the slides or it's going to be the video. Can one of you two answer that?
Definitely the video. And with your permission, we could certainly probably share the slides, but it would have to be with your permission.
Since I did this for the program, I'll defer to Mindy or Greg because I think both of them were online. So if they say okay, then not a problem on my part. I have the references, 4 slides of the 26 references I used and the last 4 slides of the brief.
Okay.
Task management, such as OneNote, paper sheets from Hans. Good question. As I built my overall project plan, I tend to use just my weekly calendar. I know how long I need to do it and do it there, but it's what I'm comfortable with. And I have, just for your knowledge, I have never used OneNote or paper sheets. I guess it's paper sheets when I print out my weekly calendar. Next, Carrie Bean. What types of pop-up tasks are most easily predicted or proactively managed? Good question, Carrie. I try to do my best, knowing my manager and know how they manage, to kind of think, have they forgotten things in the past? And I don't procrastinate anymore. I try to get done my stuff early. Of course, when I get done early, they change the project, so I have to go back and redo it. So I try to think of what those were in the past, and it may not be the same manager, but another manager, so I try to think ahead to do something that would be possibly a pop-up later to proactively manage them. At least that's what I do. You see Mindy's response. She's going to send up a follow-up email in the next week, and we'll include this information. Greg, do you keep your personal and work on one calendar or separate? I actually have two calendars. I have my personal work one on Microsoft Outlook, and then I have the UARC calendar that we've got with the new system to go there. So I don't forget anything, I put the major task in two, but that's me. So as long as you know, and I put reminders in, it's best. I like to have stuff on my personal one when I got big things coming up, because if I got my personal one linked to my cell phone, and it reminds me I've got something come up. Tony, what distinguishes an MSOM degree from an MBA, specifically for somebody already has a lot of technical engineering degree? Mindy, Greg, do you want to take that? I think Rich and Carol are here too as some of the other deputies. Okay, Mindy says, great question. We'll get back to yours, Tony, as you come here. We'll answer Luke's in case anybody else, and I'll take a stab at it. Kirk, what time management advice would you give for someone who works in a small office of 8 employees when life happens and people don't show up to work and you need to take on their role while doing your own? Well, I actually have a funny story. When I was executive officer, second in command of the ship, we lost 2 officers and a senior chief petty officer. So I had to be the number 2 in charge. I had to be the chief engineer, number 3 in charge. I had to be the ops boss, number 4 in charge, and I had to be the 3M coordinator. I had to add in and readjust my project plan, what things are we going to go and each time. Hopefully they've caught up with everything they need to do before they don't show up, and that way you already know what's going on or there. If not, maybe public access or shared access folders they could put their work in there, so if they're gone, you can take a look at it and then replan where you're going and work with your manager after that. I guess for Tony, your question right now, and I know we're coming up at the end of the hour, I will get back to you, or Mindy can get with the staff, because I don't want to overspeak. Okay, we got Rich Ham, one of our deputies. The MSOM degree follows many accepted business principles, but also follows several principles of industrial engineering. So that's a quick answer. Thank you very much, Rich, for that. And either the leadership of the program or myself will get back to you on there. I don't have an MBA, but I have a Master of Science in Operations Management, and I really see the applicability of this program in all my time as an operations manager and project manager. It gives me the skills and techniques that I need to operate in those. So the course curriculum is phenomenal. We're adding more courses. A lot of things coming great, but it gives you a good foundation with the core courses and then some of the electives we have. So with that, I have 158. Okay, Mindy, I'll read hers. The MSOM degree provides a quantitative overview of management principles. MBAs are sometimes more theoretical based, where the MSOM degree will be very applicable. You also have the ability to tailor the degree to your own career interests. I know from my decision models course, they have to do a project at work and apply the decision analysis process. So it's an applicability point to help you as an ops manager. Okay, Mindy says, as I mentioned, we will follow up with an email to you with additional material. If you have any specific time management questions after you get the material, please feel free to send me an email anytime, and you can see my email again there on the slide, K-A-M-I-C-H-E-A. It's pronounced Michealson, but I spell it E-A, so if you send it to K-A-M-I-C-H-A-E, it may not get to me at uark.edu. I concur with Mindy. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will let you go. Take care.